While many motorcycle brands have stood the test of time, Honda, BMW, Indian, Harley-Davidson, only a few truly changed the game. Some of the most innovative, daring manufacturers didn't survive long. Often, they were simply ahead of their time. Britain gave us names like Brau Superior and Vincent, but in America, one small company stood apart. Crocker Motorcycles, a brand that built bikes so powerful, they rattled the giants at Harley and Indian. Like many legendary marques, Crocker wasn't started by businessmen, but by racers. Albert Crocker was a young engineer and rider in the early 1900s, immersed in the world of high-risk American racing. Board track racing was fast and brutal, with tragic accidents like the 1912 crash that killed racer Eddie Harsher and 4 spectators. Interestingly, years later, Crocker married Harsher's widow and built a life around motorcycles. Crocker spent much of the 1920s managing Indian dealerships. He had a sharp technical mind and a passion for racing, which he eventually turned into a small business developing high-performance parts for Indian and Harley bikes. In 1930, he moved to Los Angeles and began selling used bikes and parts, while continuing to develop custom components. One of his early breakthroughs was a patent for a steering damper, an advanced idea at the time, hinting at the engineering ambition Crocker would later be known for. The next big shift came with the arrival of speedway racing in the US. This high-adrenaline short-track format had taken off in Europe and Australia, and American racers quickly embraced it. Crocker saw an opportunity to build something special. He designed a speedway racing frame and modified an Indian Scout engine with an overhead valve, OHV, setup to meet the American Motorcyclist Association's new 500cc engine rules. These bikes ran on alcohol and delivered serious performance, enough to dominate the Rudge machines that had been winning up to that point. But Crocker understood something many others didn't. Reworking heavy Indian engines was a temporary fix. If he wanted real performance, he'd have to start from scratch. And so, in 1933, he teamed up with Paul Bigsby, yes, the same Bigsby who would later revolutionize the electric guitar world, to create a brand new, purpose-built OHV single-cylinder engine specifically for speedway racing. This was no small feat. They were creating a racing engine entirely from the ground up, but they pulled it off. When the Crocker Speedway bike debuted in Emeryville, California, it was an instant sensation, winning 9 out of 12 heats on its first night. Albert Crocker himself was called up to speak. He said simply, "They're good, but they'll be better." Only about 30 of these speedway bikes were ever built. Crocker didn't have the resources for mass production, but the performance and quality of his machines were undeniable. He even experimented with chain-driven overhead cam engines in 1936, technology that wouldn't become widespread until decades later. Eventually, Crocker stepped away from speedway racing, but he wasn't done innovating. Instead, he turned his focus towards something even more ambitious, creating the ultimate American street motorcycle. In 1936, Crocker unveiled what would become one of the most desirable motorcycles ever built in the United States, the Crocker V Twin. It was the first large American twin to feature overhead valves, a design that allowed for higher revs and greater performance. The engine had a 45-degree layout and used hemispherical combustion chambers, paired with a 3-speed gearbox that could handle serious torque. The first models, known as small tanks due to their cast aluminium fuel and oil tanks, were unlike anything else on the market. Crocker offered customers the ability to order customized engines with various displacements and performance levels. Most engines were around 61 cubic inches, roughly 1,000 cc, and produced 55 to 60 horsepower, 50% more than what Harley or Indian were producing at the time. Top speed, over 110 miles per hour. Nothing else in America even came close. Crocker was so confident in the performance of his bikes that he offered a money-back guarantee. If your Crocker lost a drag race to a stock Harley or Indian, you could get a full refund. No one ever collected. Despite their power, these bikes were refined machines. Crocker continually improved his designs. Over time, he transitioned from exposed valve trains to fully enclosed ones, made casting adjustments to improve durability and airflow, and worked tirelessly on combustion chamber design. Each bike was hand-built, and total production of the big twin models was likely under 72 units. These were bespoke motorcycles built for enthusiasts, not mass-market consumers. Compared to their competition, Crocker V Twins were way ahead of their time. While Harley was just launching the Knucklehead, a bike considered advanced in its day, it was already slower and heavier than the Crocker. That says a lot. Of course, the economics were tough. Crocker's bikes were expensive to make, especially at such low volumes. With the onset of World War II and limited access to materials, Crocker shut down production in 1941. The company never had the chance to scale or become a mass-market competitor. But for those lucky enough to own one, the ride was unforgettable. What makes Crocker so legendary is not just the performance but the craftsmanship. These weren't cobbled together from leftover parts. As Matt from the Wheels Through Time Museum has said, nearly everything important, the engine, transmission, frame, brakes, fenders, was made in-house. Crocker motorcycles were truly engineered, not assembled. The engine even served as a stressed member in the frame, an idea that wouldn't become commonplace for decades. The impact of Crocker rippled far beyond its short lifespan. From drag racing to performance styling, the brand left its fingerprints on American motorcycling. Even Harley-Davidson eventually adopted elements of the Crocker look: compact, muscular builds, and engines as the centerpiece of the bike's visual identity. Today, original Crockers are some of the most valuable motorcycles in the world, with pristine examples selling for close to $1 million. One of the best surviving specimens can be found at the Wheels Through Time Museum in Maggie Valley, North Carolina. Most of the others are tucked away in private collections. But the story doesn't end there. In 1997, a group of passionate enthusiasts, including collector Michael Schacht and engineer Marcus Karalash, revived the Crocker brand in Los Angeles. Unlike many brand resurrections that just slap a famous logo onto a generic modern bike, the new Crocker team set out to recreate the originals, down to the smallest details. Using original blueprints, casting molds, and even matching the metallurgy of 1930s components, they began hand-building Crocker motorcycles once again. These aren't retro interpretations, they're continuation models, crafted just like the originals, piece by piece. Every engine case, gearbox, and frame is machined in-house. Each motorcycle is numbered, bespoke, and historically accurate. Prices reflect the labor and authenticity. A new Crocker V Twin can easily top $100,000, but for collectors and enthusiasts, it's not about the money. It's about preserving a legacy. Crocker today functions more like a steward of American motorcycle history than a conventional manufacturer. They also support the restoration of original Crocker bikes, ensuring that these rare machines continue to live and breathe on the road. Crocker never had the chance to become a global powerhouse like Harley or Indian. But in many ways, that's what makes the story special. The limitations of small-scale production didn't hinder Crocker. They defined it. Without corporate red tape, without marketing departments, Crocker could focus purely on performance, craftsmanship, and mechanical excellence. And maybe that's why people still care about Crocker today. Because in a world of mass production and plastic fairings, there's something timeless about a motorcycle built by hand, for speed, and from passion.